even though that part is over, it's like, you know, when you've had a love affair with somebody for a long time, and for Lindsay and I, it was, you know, we lived together for 5 years before we joined Fleetwood Mac, so.
She was the golden voice of Fleetwood Mac, the mystical queen of rock. But behind her glittering smile lies a painful truth. Stevie Nicks' final chapter isn't what anyone expected. Let's explore her journey. The stage lights shimmer softly, reflecting off 1,000 faces. Stevie Nicks raises her arms, her shawl floating like wings, and the crowd holds its breath. For a moment, the world is suspended in that golden light. It is the kind of magic only she could summon. For nearly half a century, Stevie Nicks has been more than a singer. She is a myth, a poet, and a survivor. Her songs were spells, her voice a kind of comfort in heartbreak and loneliness. But today, the whispers are louder than ever. After years of touring, loss, and health battles, people close to her say she will never perform again. The queen of rock's most romantic dreams has finally stepped away from the stage she built her life upon. To understand why, we have to go back, long before the glitter, the fame, and the legend. Stevie was born Stephanie Lynn Nicks in Phoenix, Arizona in 1948. Her father was a hard-working businessman whose job moved the family across cities. Her mother was imaginative, full of stories and superstition, the kind of woman who believed in fate. It was her mother who taught Stevie that words have power. Stevie began writing poetry when she was just a little girl, scribbling verses about magic, stars, and heartbreak long before she knew what they meant. As a teenager, she performed in small coffee shops and high school events, her voice already different, raspy and soulful. During college, she met Lindsey Buckingham, a talented guitarist with the same restless energy she had. They became partners in both music and life. Together, they formed a duo called Buckingham Nicks. The record did not sell much, but fate was already listening. In 1975, Mick Fleetwood invited them to join his band. That one phone call changed everything. Fleetwood Mac exploded into success. The chemistry between the 5 members was electric, sometimes beautiful, sometimes painful. Stevie's haunting songs like Rhiannon, Landslide, and Dreams made her an icon almost overnight. Her voice had a mystery to it, as if every word carried the weight of something she had already lived through. But behind the applause was chaos. Her romance with Lindsey was falling apart while they wrote and recorded Rumors, one of the best-selling albums of all time. The world sang along to their heartbreak without realizing they were watching real pain unfold through the music. She later said, "We were breaking apart, but the music wouldn't let us stop." The irony was that their suffering made them immortal. Every song felt like a letter to each other, full of love, resentment, and something no one else could understand. The band was unstoppable, but Stevie was falling apart inside. The long nights, the constant travel, the pressure to stay beautiful and perfect under the lights, it was too much. Like many artists in the 1970s, she turned to drugs to stay awake, to keep performing, to feel something. Became her companion. By the early 1980s, her health was beginning to crumble. At her lowest point, doctors told her the drug had eaten a hole through her nasal cartilage. The news terrified her. It was a brutal wake-up call, and she finally checked herself into rehab. But even when she gave up, the nightmare did not end. To help her sleep and manage anxiety, doctors prescribed Klonopin, a powerful sedative. At first, she thought it would help her heal. Instead, it numbed her completely. She stopped writing songs. She stopped feeling joy. Years later, she described that time as 8 lost years. The woman who once danced like a spirit on stage now spent days sitting in silence, struggling to find herself again. But Stevie Nicks has always been a fighter. When she finally quit the medication in the mid-1990s, the withdrawal nearly broke her body and mind. Still, She fought through it, one painful day at a time, determined to return to the person she once was. Her comeback was quiet but powerful. Fleetwood Mac reunited in the late 1990s, performing together for the dance tour. It was a celebration, not just of the band, but of survival. Stevie also released solo albums that reminded the world she was still a storyteller. Songs like Trouble in Shangri-La carried the same mystical beauty that made her famous, only now they were seasoned with wisdom and pain. Younger artists started calling her an influence. Sheryl Crow, Taylor Swift, Florence Welch, all of them grew up on her music. She became something more than a singer. She became a symbol of endurance. But time is cruel, even to legends. Decades of touring began to take a toll. Back pain, vocal strain, and fatigue made it harder to perform. Still, she refused to stop. Her fans called her the witch who could never age, and for years it seemed true. Then came 2019. Stevie Nicks became the first woman ever inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once with Fleetwood Mac and once as a solo artist. During her acceptance speech, she said, "I hope I have inspired women to be their own bosses. Do not let anyone tell you that your time is over." Her words were powerful, but not long after, everything changed again. When the pandemic began, Stevie went completely silent. She avoided interviews and refused to perform. In a personal note to fans, she said catching COVID could destroy her lungs and end her life. With existing health conditions, it was simply too risky. So she disappeared from the spotlight she had lived under since she was a teenager. Friends described her life during that time as peaceful but lonely. She spent her days writing, painting, and taking long walks around her California home. She still wrote songs, but not for albums. They were for herself, small pieces of reflection, written in notebooks scattered around her house. In 2020, she lost several close friends to illness, including Fleetwood Mac's co-founder Peter Green and her longtime stylist, Margie Kent. Each loss reminded her of how fragile everything had become. She started saying that life after 70 was not about performing anymore, but about remembering. As time passed, fans began to wonder if she would ever return to the stage. Some insiders said her health no longer allowed the strain of touring. Others believed she had simply made peace with her legacy. The world has changed many times since Stevie Nicks first stood beneath a spotlight, yet her voice still feels timeless. Even after years of silence, her songs drift through late-night playlists and across movie soundtracks. For her fans, she has never really gone away. But for Stevie, the quiet years have become something sacred, a kind of peace she spent her entire life chasing. When the pandemic shut down concerts across the world, Stevie stepped away from the stage and into her home in Pacific Palisades, California. It was more than a break. It was a deliberate choice to protect her life. She spoke openly about her fear of catching the virus, explaining that her lungs and immune system were fragile from decades of touring and exhaustion. For someone who had lived half her life on the road, the sudden stillness felt surreal. Yet in that stillness, she discovered something she had been missing for years. She began to write again, not for the charts or the stage, but for herself. Her journals filled with poems, letters, and memories. Some were about her youth, some about people she had lost, and others about the small beauty in everyday life. She said in an interview, "I used to write songs for the world. Now I write them for me." Her home became a reflection of her soul. The rooms were filled with candlelight, old photographs, and vintage scarves that once fluttered beneath concert lights. Her piano sits by a window overlooking the ocean. Friends describe her mornings as quiet and gentle. She wakes up early, makes tea, and writes letters to friends, sometimes even to those who are no longer alive. It is her way of keeping them close. Stevie's days now move to a softer rhythm. She still dresses in lace and velvet. She still lights candles when she writes. She still believes that fate has a plan for her. Her friends call her half poet and half sage. She listens more than she speaks, and when she does, her voice carries the calm of someone who has seen everything and survived it all. But even in that peace, there is a sadness that lingers. Years of performing took their toll. Her back hurts often, and her voice tires faster than it used to. She no longer sings as much as before, not because she cannot, but because she wants to remember her voice the way it once was, strong and free. Her friend once said, she doesn't miss the fame. She misses the magic of that first note, the moment the world disappeared. Her relationship with music has changed. It is no longer about applause or expectation. It is about memory. Every song she ever wrote still belongs to her, and she revisits them quietly. During an interview in 2022, she said softly, "I was so busy being Stevie Nicks that I forgot to be Stephanie sometimes. Now I am learning to just be me again." Her story has always been filled with love and loneliness, glamour and pain, and she carries all of it with grace. Stevie never married and never had children, yet she often says she has thousands of daughters. She is talking about the young women who grew up listening to her, who found courage in her songs, and who learned from her honesty. Taylor Swift once described meeting Stevie Nicks as meeting a wise fairy godmother. Others call her the high priestess of rock. Stevie laughs when she hears that, but she admits it makes her proud. She once said, "If I have been a guiding light for someone, then everything I went through was worth it." Even though she may never return to touring, her influence continues to reach new generations. Artists like Lana Del Rey, Florence Welch, and Haim have all been inspired by her words, her energy, and her mystical stage presence. Her music has become something beyond entertainment. It has become emotional truth, set to melody, something that can never truly fade. Still, her body cannot keep up with the legend anymore. The years of travel, sleepless nights, and constant pressure have left her fragile. Friends say she sometimes struggles with her balance and tires quickly. Her doctors have advised her to avoid long tours or heavy schedules, and for the first time in her life, she listens. Her world is smaller now, but not lonelier. She has surrounded herself with a circle of loyal friends and assistants who have been with her for decades. They share quiet dinners, play old records, and read her fan letters out loud. She still receives hundreds every month. Many come from women who say her songs help them through heartbreak or loss. She keeps them all in boxes, tied with ribbons. She has also become quietly generous. In the last few years, Stevie has donated to children's hospitals, women's shelters, and music education programs. Her money now goes where her voice once went, toward healing instead of performing. Her spiritual side has deepened with age. She still believes in dreams and signs from the universe. She says that every important decision in her life came from a dream. When asked if she still dreams of performing, she smiled and said, "Sometimes I do, but I wake up happy it was only a dream." There is poetry in that statement. For a woman who lived her life in song, peace has finally replaced performance. And perhaps that is not an ending, but a reward after everything she gave to the world. Even though she no longer tours, Stevie still appears occasionally in small collaborations. In 2023, she recorded a gentle version of "For What It's Worth" by Buffalo Springfield. Her voice sounded different, older but deeply human, carrying wisdom in every note. It reminded her fans that legends do not fade. They evolve. Her days are simple now. Mornings are for writing, afternoons for painting or reading, evenings for reflection. She watches old films, listens to vinyl, and sometimes plays recordings of her younger self. She once said, "I don't miss the stage. I miss who I was on that stage." Her old friend Mick Fleetwood visited her once and said, "You have earned the rest." Stevie smiled and replied, "I think I finally believe that." Sometimes she looks out over the ocean and wonders what her younger self would think of her life now. Would she understand the calm, the stillness, the acceptance? Perhaps not. But that is the beauty of it. The ocean outside Stevie Nicks's home moves in slow rhythm, like one of her old ballads. The sunlight touches the water and glimmers softly, almost as if it remembers her. Inside, Stevie sits by the window with her notebook, surrounded by candles, photographs, and the soft sound of wind chimes. This is where she lives now, between memories and music, between the woman she once was and the one she has become. For most of her life, she belonged to the world. Fans claimed pieces of her through lyrics, posters, and rumors. The stage lights became her sun, but now she lives for something smaller, quieter, and more real. She has learned that sometimes the greatest performance is knowing when to stop. People often ask her if she regrets anything. She usually smiles before answering. "Every mistake I made led me to something beautiful," she once said. "The bad times gave me the songs, and the songs gave me my life." When she looks back, she does not see fame. She sees faces, the people she loved, the ones she lost, the crowds that sang with her, and the friends who stood beside her through the storm. She has spoken about how grateful she is to have lived through the wild years of the 1970s and 1980s. Many of her peers did not. Stevie often says that every survivor has a responsibility to tell the truth. For her, that truth is honesty about the cost of success. She has never hidden her struggles with addiction, heartbreak, or exhaustion. In doing so, she became more than a rock star. She became a mirror for anyone who has ever fallen apart and learned to build themselves again. Now, in her 70s, she talks about aging with grace, not sadness. "Getting older is not the end of the magic," she once told a journalist. "It's just a different kind of spell." She believes that creativity never dies, it only changes form. For her, music still lives inside the rhythm of her breathing, the poems she writes, and the stories she tells to close friends. Her friends describe her as wiser, softer, and still deeply intuitive. She does not chase attention anymore, but when she speaks, people listen. Younger artists continue to visit her for guidance. She encourages them to protect their art fiercely and to never let anyone own their spirit. She tells them the same thing she has told herself for decades. Do not let the world wear down your soul. You can give everything to the music, but never let the music take everything from you. Even though Stevie no longer performs, her influence has never been stronger. In documentaries and tributes, her name continues to shine. Her music plays in television shows, new artists cover her songs, and generations who were not even born during Fleetwood Mac's prime still find comfort in her lyrics. Landslide, a song she wrote as a young woman, has become an anthem for reflection. She once said she wrote it while staring at the Rocky Mountains, wondering if she should give up on music. Now, she says, she finally understands what the song truly meant. It was about change, about fear, and about letting go. She says she sings it in her heart even now, only this time she is not afraid. Her health remains delicate, but she has learned to treat her body like a friend instead of a battlefield. She exercises lightly, eats carefully, and rests when she needs to. She no longer pushes herself for the sake of expectation. She has nothing left to prove. The world already knows who she is. Friends say she has also found comfort in solitude. Her nights are quiet, filled with handwritten letters, old records, and the glow of candlelight. Sometimes she watches her younger self in concert footage and smiles at the energy she once had. Other times, she turns off the screen and listens only to the waves outside her window. She believes that peace is the final reward for surviving chaos. It is what she calls the soft afterglow. And for Stevie Nicks, that afterglow is full of gratitude. Even in retirement, her creative soul never sleeps. She still paints, writes poetry, and journals about her dreams. Those who visit her say she still has that sparkle in her eyes, that same mysterious presence that once filled arenas. She laughs easily now, something she could not do for many years. When asked what she wants to be remembered for, she once said, "Not the clothes, not the fame, not even the music. I want to be remembered for surviving, for showing that you can go through everything and still be kind." That is the essence of her legacy. Stevie Nicks is not just the queen of rock music. She is a living story about endurance, love, heartbreak, and rebirth. Her shawls and silver boots may rest in closets now, but her voice still echoes in every corner of the world. Every time someone plays Dreams or Gypsy, she lives again in those notes. She once wrote in her journal, "When the music stops, the silence sings." Perhaps that is what her life has become, a long, gentle song without sound. She is no longer chasing fame or running from heartbreak. She is resting in the middle of her own story, finally free from the rush of expectation. The woman who once danced beneath endless lights now sits quietly under the sun, and that, in its own way, is just as powerful. Her story is not a tragedy, it is a lesson, a reminder that success is not the same as happiness, that survival is a kind of art, and that sometimes the bravest thing an artist can do is stop performing and simply live. As the camera fades to the ocean waves, her voice can be heard in the distance, singing the words she wrote long ago. "I've been afraid of changing, because I built my life around you. But time makes you bolder. Even children get older. And I'm getting older too." The song fades, the screen darkens, and the world is reminded once again why Stevie Nicks will always be more than a musician. She is a legend, a survivor, and the living proof that even when the stage goes dark, the soul can still shine. If Stevie's story touched your heart, click like, subscribe, and share her journey. Every view keeps her spirit alive and celebrates a woman who turned survival into timeless art.